Captain Midnight.
This video is brought to you by Dashlane. So Peter Parker is going on a vacation. You know, anyone who dissolves into dust after being snapped out of existence by a mad titan could probably use a break. Maybe some time to reflect, you know, take in a museum or two. Okay, in all seriousness, I have no idea how Spider-Man is going to be alive and well in the now announced Spider-Man Far From Home, but let's set that aside for a second and talk about what we do know about the film, and how what we do know about it could line up to make a great and truly unique new Spider-Man movie. So, okay, we don't know all that much about Far From Home, but I'll briefly go over what we do know. We know the title, obviously, thanks to a video from Tom Holland. We know that they're filming in London, and that most of the film will take place there or elsewhere in Europe. And we know that the villain will probably be Mysterio, who will most likely be played by Jake Gyllenhaal. That's not nothing, and it all adds up to signal some pretty big changes for the franchise. But let's start with maybe the biggest shift, the change in location. I've seen some people kind of upset by the European setting, which on some level I understand. Spider-Man is a quintessentially New York hero, and seeing him moved, not just out of the city but out of the whole country, for what I assume is going to be most of the movie, is kind of weird at first glance, and I understand how that could feel kind of wrong to some people. But there is plenty of examples of Spider-Man stories working outside of that setting too. One of my favorites is The Commuter Cometh, a mid-80s comic from the great Peter David. This story was actually pretty special to me as a kid. Sure, I'm an American, but I grew up far, far away from the skyscrapers of Manhattan, and there was something really funny and thrilling about seeing Spider-Man stuck in the suburbs, unable to use his most famous power. It's such a great idea that they even used it for a small joke in Homecoming. Now obviously London is not anything like an American suburb, and chances are pretty good that he'll be swinging around some of the city's most famous landmarks, so when I say they should look to stories like The Commuter Cometh for inspiration, I don't really mean they should do that exact concept. I really mean how the comic was able to take Peter out of his comfort zone in such an effective and entertaining way. I'd love to see Far From Home take full advantage of putting Spider-Man in an unfamiliar location, especially Holland's Spider-Man, who is a lot more awkward and funny than the previous versions.
Even make Spider-Man slide down a street. Lots of action for one and all. Action figures.
Then there's Mysterio, and honestly I'm really excited for this, especially if Jake Gyllenhaal is a sure thing. And here's something weird you might not know, Gyllenhaal has actually almost been in a Spider-Man movie before, since he nearly replaced Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 2, who either had a back injury or was playing hardball with his salary. It kinda depends on who you ask. Whatever it was though, they obviously figured it out and the Gyllenhaal replacement plan didn't happen. That aside though, I think he's a really fantastic actor, and his work in Nightcrawler especially convinces me that he could be an absolutely great bad guy. That performance is honestly one of my favorites from this decade. Just so chilling and creepy. It's like if Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver started a small business and was eager to impress. If you haven't watched Nightcrawler, I highly recommend it. But let's actually talk about the character he's playing, Mysterio. I'm a little hesitant to dig too deeply into him this early because the fact is, there's a lot of takes on Mysterio out there, and almost all of them are wildly different from each other. The MCU tends to take a lot of inspiration from the Ultimate Universe, and Homecoming was definitely no exception, grabbing a lot of pieces of Brian Michael Bendis' two Spider-Men and sprinkling it throughout the movie. But and I'll readily admit this is kind of just a gut feeling, I think they'll stay pretty far away from the ultimate version of Mysterio. The main reason being that, as much as I love the 2000s Ultimate Spidey comics, Mysterio was never a particular high point. I didn't like his story arc that much, and to top it off, I'm pretty sure it was revealed that Ultimate Mysterio was actually an android the whole time, or something. I'm just not into the ultimate version of this character. In the main Marvel universe, there's been a few different Mysterios too, but I'm just gonna go ahead and assume they're going old school. Good old Quentin Beck, master of special effects. That seems to fit with the tone set up by Homecoming a lot better than some of the later, more supernatural Mysterio stories. So let's get into the basics. Whenever a superhero movie uses a villain effectively, it's generally because they've nailed the dynamics between them and the hero. thematically and emotionally. Any pair of superpowered people could fight. We've seen and read that 100 times. It's just not enough. And that's why a villain like Malekith in Thor: The Dark World falls so flat. There was nothing that connected those two characters in an interesting way beyond one of them having an evil plan and the other one wanting to stop them. Not exactly thematically rich and meaningful material there. Now compare that to what Homecoming did with the Vulture. Never one of my favorite villains. Like, in terms of old Spider-Man bad guys, I've always liked Mysterio and Kraven a lot more. But Homecoming found a way to actually build an interesting dynamic between Michael Keaton's Adrian Toomes and Peter Parker. They come from similar backgrounds, which the movie uses to its advantage. But they also came up with the Liz connection, and that really worked wonders for the movie in my opinion. So I'm curious how they could go about doing that in Far From Home. Quentin Beck is a bitter and mostly unsuccessful special effects guy. I could see the movie doing some really fun commentary on Hollywood with this premise, and I could also see it working with the London setting too, since so much film production now goes on there. But where's the connection to Peter Parker? I'm not saying it has to be as simple as this guy knows Peter in his personal life, although that trope has served plenty of Spidey movies well in the past. I more mean, what's the screenwriter's angle here? What's the engine powering the differences between these characters that's on a deeper level than just Mysterio wants money or whatever and Spider-Man's trying to stop him? Because they're definitely gonna need more than that for a satisfying villain. And like I said, Homecoming really understood this, so hopefully Far From Home will as well.
Running out of mirrors, Spider-Man!
I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers, but I'm pretty sure Marvel Studios has thought a lot about this too. And for me at least, what I keep coming back to over and over again is how unsettling Mysterio's powers can be. This is why I've always loved the character, despite his backstory never being all that interesting to me. He has the ability to make Spider-Man completely distrust his surroundings, sometimes to the point where he can't tell fact from fiction. He can make you see things that aren't there, believe things that aren't true, and really psychologically torture his enemies. Costume-wise, he's really easy to mock, but his gimmick is just so good, and I think that could be the key to the dynamic between Peter and Quentin. Peter Parker has been through a lot in the past few years. His uncle died, he got powers, he was made an Avenger by a billionaire, he fought other heroes, then his prom date's dad, and finally was killed and, presumably resurrected. You know, that would be pretty tough stuff for anyone to deal with, especially a teenager. Mysterio could use all of that to his advantage and really get under Peter's skin, which could be really emotional and have the nice added bonus of looking pretty great visually too. I've been asked by a few people to comment on the name itself, and I don't know, honestly it seems kind of weird that the word home is apparently the common through line they're going with these MCU Spider-Man movies, but I don't really have strong feelings about it either. But what I do feel strongly about though is Mysterio, and using him to make a Spider-Man film that could stand toe to toe with Spider-Man 2. Not that one, you know the one. Quentin Beck has been sitting on the shelf unused by screenwriters for a long time now, and I can't wait to see what they do with him. So it looks like the biggest problem that Peter Parker will face while vacationing is Mysterio. But over here in the real world, there's a much darker, maybe even more sinister problem you have while traveling. Yeah, that's right, unsecure public Wi-Fi networks. Okay, sure, maybe it isn't as exciting as an angry man in a fishbowl helmet, but online security is still really important. Thankfully, taking care of this isn't going to require a giant brawl on an invisible plane or anything. All you have to do is sign up for Dashlane. I'm very happy to have Dashlane back as a sponsor because if you're watching this right now, chances are you're online a lot and could definitely use their service. Dashlane is great at protecting against hacks and phishing scams, and a huge part of that is how it keeps your passwords backed up and easy to access on every device you own. So it's not just secure, it's easy to use too. If you're anything like me, you probably do a lot of your financial stuff online. Shopping, paying for Spotify, banking, all that good stuff. Dashlane makes this way safer because you'll never have to save your private information in an unsecured browser or with a merchant again, giving you way more control of your online identity. So if there's a corporate data breach, which we know isn't exactly rare these days, you don't have to worry about it. So not only does Dashlane keep everything secure, it also logs you in automatically. It creates unique passwords for every site, so a breach in one could never affect the others. You can sign up and get Dashlane for free on iOS or Android or the desktop version. And you can also get a 30-day free trial of its premium features, which includes a ton of useful stuff: secure account backup, the ability to sync among all your devices, secure password sharing, and more. So to check it out, go to the link dashlane.com/midnight in the video description or pinned comment below, and get 10% off the premium features by using the promo code MIDNIGHT.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once, because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started, because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.